when Mr. Burham was finally brought back into New York State, and they formally dismissed their charges. At that point, all that was left holding Mr. Burham was a detainer out of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This was intentional on our part. Certainly, we have charges that we intend to assert. As most of you are aware, once a crime occurs, there's a tremendous amount of inertia and time and resources that are put into the development and preservation of evidence, and that's what we've been doing since the early morning hours of May 11th. This has been a day-to-day operation for all of us, with assistance from New York State Police, I should add, and the federal government as well. So with all of that, we are still in the process of developing evidence. We're going to take advantage of the opportunity that we have with the assertion by Pennsylvania of charges, and we're going to allow them the opportunity to go forward with those charges so that we can continue in our efforts. We do this for, very purposefully, because we're very mindful of what it takes to prosecute a homicide case. We're very mindful of changes in our discovery laws here in New York State, and certainly once charges are filed, the right to counsel attaches, and there are limitations on our investigation that are implicated by the changes in the laws that occurred a few years ago, and the constitutional rights that are afforded to defendants in any criminal action. So with that, we are standing by. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have our day in court. That doesn't mean that the family of Kala Hodgkin is not going to see justice served here. All of us are very focused on that. We will be asserting charges fairly shortly. It's hard to anticipate. We've got testing that's out right now that New York State Police is helping us with. We're waiting for those results, and I anticipate that at some point in the near future, maybe within 2 or 3 months, we're going to then go into a grand jury related to what happened to poor Kala Hodgkin. I think that's a summary of everything. We've had a lot of questions asked of us as to how we're going to proceed. One more thing I would add is that I've spoken with Kayla's mother a number of times. I've spoken with her sister. We've been in communications. This is something that we've tried to make them aware of, because we understand what they must be going through, which it's almost unimagiable. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try my best to answer it. It is still an ongoing investigation. I'm sort of limited as to what I could talk about concerning what evidence has been developed, but it's really our goal as much as possible to be as transparent with the public as we can.
Now, can you comment Jason, can you comment at all about Michael Burham being considered a prime suspect?
Yeah, I don't think it's, I think it's very clear that Mr. Burham is a prime suspect in our homicide and related arson.
And where is he being held, or who right now, what authority is holding him?
So whenever somebody is charged with a crime outside of the state and they are located within the state, there are certain fugitive of justice proceedings that are brought. Because he was released from federal custody in Erie, in the county of Erie, New York, in Buffalo, jurisdiction over, him was transferred to the Erie County Sheriff's Office. I imagine that I can't speak for what's going on in Erie County, but I would imagine that what's happening is either today or very shortly, he's going to be brought before a Supreme Court or county court justice in Erie County, and they're going to provide him with his rights relative to the charges in Pennsylvania. He'll be afforded an opportunity to contest extradition, or he may consent to it. I think pending his extradition, he'll be held in Erie County, probably in the Erie County Holding Center.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a quick question. So we know that arson charges have been filed. In other press releases, we've seen that it has said that, but in recent ones, there hasn't been arson charges. Can you clarify if there is?
I didn't catch everything that you said. Can you just repeat that for me a little bit?
Burham?
Yeah, so in recent press releases, we've seen that arson charges have not been filed, but in other ones we see that they have. Can you clarify if there is any charges for arson?
Yeah, so it was my understanding that that there was an arson charge that was laid by Jamestown police shortly after the incident occurred. Before Mr. Burham's arraignment on that charge, he hasn't been arraigned. The Jamestown police withdrew the arson charge so that we would have no detainers on him. I should also point out that the allegation related to that is a vehicle fire, you know, that Mr. Burham had set a certain vehicle on fire. That's an arson in the third degree charge here in New York State, which is not a bailable offense. So, you know, had we gone forward with an arraignment on that, you know, under the law, he generally speaking, he would be released.
Jason, Terry Frank here.
Hey.
I did want to get a little bit of clarification. So essentially, you're delaying your process and letting Pennsylvania move forward to give you a little bit more time in this case.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
See, you could have summed it up for me, and I was very long-winded with that, so I apologize. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear.
Did Pennsylvania give you any sort of time frame about how long their prosecution might take, when we might see a trial in Chautauqua County?
I think the district attorney there, Rob Greene, very experienced prosecutor, is probably best suited to discuss that. Yeah, I don't know if he's on. You know, he may be on the call. I'd have to double check.
I did see. Yeah. And he says the Warren County DA has no comment at this time.
So it's hard to speak for Warren County. You know, you know, you've got Pennsylvania State Police. These are professional law enforcement organizations. District Attorney Greene, they engage in the same process that we do, in that they work to develop evidence. They have a slightly different, a dramatically different fact pattern than we do. So their prosecution is already underway because the charges have been filed, and their criminal procedure laws are quite different than what we encounter here in New York State.
Jason, Terry Frank again. Quick question with regards to representation. Does Mr. Burham, Michael Burham, does he have any legal representation at this point? We've had federal, we've had state, Pennsylvania, New York involved in this.
So remember now, in New York, there was a brief period when there were charges asserted against him, but prior to his arraignment, when generally a representation gets established, those charges were withdrawn. So there's no New York representation on a federal level at his arraignment, when he would be afforded a counsel. If he couldn't afford one, they would provide him one. The U.S. Attorney's Office formally dismissed the charges, so that sort of moves it into Pennsylvania. And until the extradition process plays itself out and Mr. Burham is back in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I would take it that he doesn't have a counsel at this point.
All right, thank you.
Jason, Dave Raleigh, just a follow-up. You mentioned about once you get your evidence, you get all the ducks in a row, so to speak, that then you could be ready to proceed with an indictment. Could that happen while he is facing prosecution in Pennsylvania?
Yes, we can indict at any point. So what would happen here, the way it generally could play out, and there's a number of different variables at play here, is that he's going to be prosecuted through the, obviously the court system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. When that process completes itself, and let's assume for a moment that he is convicted of the abduction and kidnapping charges arising from the conduct that he's accused of, he's then going to be sentenced. At which point we could bring him back here and have him arraigned, have him stand trial here in the event that he were convicted for the crimes that he's accused of here. When that stage of the process occurs, then any sentence would run consecutive to whatever he received in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So conceivably, he could get whatever that number is in Pennsylvania, which I don't know, but just say 20 years. And then if he were, once he completes his sentence, then he would be returned here under our detainer, and he would have to serve a sentence here under that scenario.
Okay, so just to make it clear, basically they'd have to go through the court process, the prosecution, before you could bring them here on charges.
Essentially, yes, there may be some exceptions to that, but that's generally how I've seen it play out here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. I appreciate everybody's interest in this. I think I just conclude this by just pointing out that, from our perspective, this is all about what happened to poor Kala Hodgkin. Everything that I've heard about her is that she was a beautiful human being, a very loving mother. And it's just a horrific set of events here, and we're committed to seeing this process through. We're going to move very carefully and deliberately to make sure that we get the job done correctly. Thank you very much, and with that, I'll exit out.